Over the early months of 2024, 3 competitors traveled from North America and France over to Japan to invade some of their most prestigious majors and compete in the strongest region in Smash right now. These players were Zamba, ApolloKage, and Gluttony, and while many people came with them, these 3 were by far the most notable. They're also the topic of a small mini-series I started last week called How'd They Do, where I went over how Zamba did in Japan, asking, how'd he do? Today is the second episode in that series, and the player of interest for us today is ApolloKage. AK has actually been back in America for a while, Zamba for even longer, and Gluttony is just now leaving Japan to head to Genesis X. But I'm very busy, so I've been releasing this series when I can. AK has the most confusing tale from Japan. He has the least amount of VODs from the big tournaments, but actually, ApolloKage is the only person of the 3 that we're covering in this series that went to locals. Both Zamba and Gluttony only went to the big majors as well as Cafeteria Cup, but ApolloKage grinded out any local he could attend. AK got the lowest placements of our 3 players at the big super majors, but is also the only one here to actually win multiple tournaments. AK's trip to Japan was volatile, confusing, and in dire need of some more VODs, but we'll be covering all of them and the major performances in today's video. Just a reminder before we begin that if you want to support me monetarily, you can do so by using links to my Patreon and channel memberships in the description below. With that out of the way, let's get started by taking a look at the first and biggest tournament of AK's weekend, Umebura SP10. So guess how many VODs AK had from Umebura? I mean, we're coming off of Zamba's video and he had like 10 VODs, so a lot? Actually, you'd be wrong. He was only put on stream twice. But hey, that's more than we'll get later on. Like I said, AK was not put on stream very much at the majors. In fact, one of the 2 streamed sets was AK's very first one, against a Sora main named Omega. And expectedly, AK swept this set in quick 2-0 fashion, before moving on in bracket and eliminating Halicon and Omnaoto flawlessly. After this, AK had to go up against a Japanese snake main named Ike. Somewhat confusing, I know. But rather unexpectedly, AK would lose the Snake Ditto in a 3-0, dropping into losers shockingly early to Ike. After this, AK defeated European Rosa main Homika 3-1 before moving on and defeating Uame 3-1. And while that was a solid victory, it would be AK's last, as his next set would be a 3-0 loss to Rosalina main Ocha in the midst of their breakout run. This ended AK's run at Umebura SP10 at 65th as the 15th seed. This was an insane turn of events, and the fact that AK was upset so early on is likely the reason why his run was mostly unstreamed. But the next tournament that AK attended was Cafeteria Cup, the impromptu Japanese invitational, and here, AK had the chance to do much better. Coming into the Invitational as the 5th seed, we would have way more VODs of AK if the side stream hadn't locked all of their streamed sets behind a paywall. As annoying as this is, it was mostly just AK's first 2 pool sets that were missing. Those sets being a 3-1 win against Cosmos and a 3-0 loss against Kanaji, while AK's 3-0 victory over Jogibu was indeed streamed on VGBC. The wins against Jogibu and Cosmos are impressive, but predictable. The loss versus Kanaji, however, was not predicted by anyone. We just talked about Kanaji in yesterday's video on Super Duper Sunshine, but the fact that Kanaji beat AK and Snake Shulk, widely considered to be Shulk's worst matchup, in a 3-0 is insane, and just makes me even more upset that the VOD is locked behind a paywall forever. Anyways, AK then moved up into the final bracket and immediately lost to Neo 3-1, dropping into losers. Once here, AK first defeated Takara 3-1 to make it into top 8 through losers side. After this, AK would proceed to go on a fairly impressive losers run, first defeating Senra in a close Game 5 set, before next moving on into losers quarterfinals and winning the run back versus Kanaji in one of the most insane reversals I've seen in 2024. But unfortunately, that reversal was the high note that AK's run ended on. As in losers semis, ApolloKage had to fight Neo again, and once again would lose, this time 3-0, for a final placement of 4th as the 5th seed. And hey, you know what? That was a really good tournament performance, AK. How about we wash down that good performance with yet another super major? Kowloon 9 with Sumobato. True to AK's volatile performance at these majors, this was AK's best performance at a Japanese major during this trip that was mostly done through losers. That's because after only winning one set in pools, ApolloKage would lose his second set of the entire tournament to a Game & Watch main named Renami in a close Game 5 set. So yeah. But this is AK's best performance of the trip, right? Right indeed, dear viewers. AK clawed his way out of pools by first defeating Kazuha 3-0 and next defeating Sylph in a close Game 5, as well as Gakimasa 3-0 to make it out of pools on loser's side. After this, AK went on an insane losers run filled with notable opponents, defeating Enki, the French Pikachu, in a 3-0 set victory, before moving on and next defeating Neitoru 3-0, Suinoko 3-1, and lastly Goryoka in a close Game 5 set. And just like that, AK had made it to top 32 after having lost his second set of the entire tournament. Not only did he have many impressive wins, but this was one of the best losers runs of the entire tournament. But unfortunately, it came to an end after a Game 5 loss to Akikikusu, ending AK's insane run at 25th place as the 11th seed. And while this was technically an underperformance, I don't think you can call this insane losers run disappointing at all. But we're not done here. This tournament is where the Zamba video ended, but that's because Zamba didn't attend anything else. But remember when I told you earlier that AK attended locals in Japan? Well, get ready, because in between Kowloon 9 with Sumobato and Ult Core 2nd, AK's last tourney in Japan, he attended 4 locals, only being put on stream in half of them. We're about to blow through all 4 of these local performances pretty quickly, so strap in. AK's first local was Shibuya Tatsu No. 7, where AK entered as the first seed. ApolloKage swept his way to top 8, benefiting from a Taguyan DQ as well as defeating Little Mac main Mona Mona and Mac Carp, both in 3-0s, in order to make it into top 8 from winner's side. Once here, AK defeated Marcos the Rob to make it into winner's finals, where AK went up against and defeated Ice Climbers main Tomisa 3-0, advancing into grand finals from winner's side. And lastly, after Tomisa made it back into grands, AK 3-0'd him again to win the entire tournament as the first seed without dropping a single game, like a true grinder. The second local was Weekly Smash Party number 120, which had no AK VODs. AK, the 4th seed, got wins over Kuriban 2-1, Enki 2-0, and Reno 2-0, but would lose to Goryoka and Fui, both in 2-0s, for a final placement of 9th as the 4th seed. The third local was Shin Toryumon number 28, which AK entered as the number 6 seed. But this tournament was crazy, as AK only defeated Enki 2-0 for the 3rd time in this trip, losing to Demiya the Sephiroth 2-1 and Fui 2-0 for the 2nd time in this trip for a final placement of 17th as the number 6 seed after going 1-2. But AK would bounce back from that at the 4th and final local, Shinosuma number 102.5, which ApolloKage entered as the 1st seed. Here, AK defeated Dosi, Negiharu, and Mantis P, all in 2-0 set victories, to make it into winners finals flawlessly, no games dropped. Once in winners finals, AK defeated South Korean Joker main Ashen 3-0, moving into grand finals from winners side. And once Ashen made it back into grands, ApolloKage would defeat him yet again, this time in a 3-1, to win Shinosuma number 192.5 as the 1st seed. Whew, okay, that was all 4 of the locals that AK attended during his time in Japan. But now it's time for the last tournament that ApolloKage attended, the National Ult Core 2nd. For both Gluttony and ApolloKage, their trips began with Umebura SP10 and ended with Ult Core 2nd. And for ApolloKage, he entered the tournament as the 8th seed. AK actually had a really good winners run, sweeping pools and defeating Saboten 3-0 once in top 96. However, after this, ApolloKage went up against Masa and would unfortunately lose that set 3-1, dropping into losers. Once here, AK managed to get an impressive win, defeating Tora, the best Ike player in the world, in a 3-1 set victory. And after beating her, AK moved on in bracket to face a very familiar opponent. ApolloKage had to fight Fui for the 3rd time in this trip, and even though it went down to a close Game 5, AK would eventually lose this set 3-2, being eliminated at 13th as the 8th seed after a truly unfortunate bracket pull. And just like that, ApolloKage's time in Japan was over. AK has learnt a lot from his own admission, and his Japan trip was truly the most volatile, unpredictable one in our 3-part miniseries. From being the only person to win multiple tournaments, to going 1-2 at a local, to being eliminated by the same dang Yoshi player 3 separate times, to having the best losers run of this entire miniseries, the King of Pirates is truly an unpredictable player. And you know what? That might be my favorite part about him. That's going to be it for today's video. Before I go, shout out to my patrons at Laster, Frosco233, Logan S, Persipom, Wawa, Mr. Sinister, Happy Feet, and my 2 patrons Iltis and Diamond Blaze. Additionally, shout out my YouTube members Loco Soko, DCR Jr., Defective, Diarrhea, Fanoff, Boston R, Iltis, Gon SSBU, Kirby Fan, Nexus, and my tier 2 members Mike G, Wu-Chang Forever, and Stormtrooper. Lastly, extra special thanks to my tier 3 patrons Ocean Man, who says RisterMice is sorry for playing Min Min, MistyBot, who says in my opinion Me Gunner is high tier, and Fat Blizzard, who says Zamba is top 10. If you want to support me using any of these methods, links are in the description below. Also, I want to give one last sincere thanks to Let Me Fly for their continued support of my channel. Link to their Twitter page is in the description below. Don't miss tomorrow's upload, but until then, I've been RisterMice, and thank you all so very much for watching.